Hi mga kabano, today I'm going to show you how to cook Laing Linguine. Right, that's a bit of a tongue twister maybe for Filipinos to try. Try saying Laing Linguine, Laing Linguine, Laing Linguine. 10 times. I struggled to get the third one out. And it's a bit of a tongue twister of a recipe title, and it's a bit of a tongue twister of a dish, right? Because we're literally going to bang together Bicol's finest dish, laing, which I absolutely love. It's one of my favorite things to eat in the Philippines since I first came here. And, you know, a very Italian style of cooking. I mean, we're going to turn our laing into a pesto. Pesto is a really great thing to make at home, right? You got your fresh basil leaves in there. You got usually some nuts. You can use cashews. I use macadamias sometimes. Pine nuts is probably the most commonly used. You put in some pecorino cheese, you put olive oil, garlic, and all of this, and you blend that up, and that's pesto. And that tastes absolutely delicious with pasta. But in the Philippines, we thought, you know, here's an opportunity to do something totally different by using a slightly more bitter herbaceous leaf, which is the taro leaf or gabi. And this idea was actually passed on to me by Eduardo. He's an Australian chef who I met in the Northern Territory at a Filipino cooking competition. He won, by the way. And he was saying, you know, in Melbourne, he actually cooked this recipe really because he ran out of Australian ingredients to make pesto. So he used Filipino ingredients to make Australian-style pesto pasta. And so he was telling me about it, and I thought, you know, we got to try this out on the show. So we've had to think about how to do that really well here. And we're going to show you how to do that today. So let's get right into it. Well, the base of this dish will be mostly European inspired, and for that reason I'm going to use a real 100% olive oil for cooking this one instead of vegetable oil or cooking oil that we'd normally use with Filipino cooking. And to that I'm going to add just a little bit of garlic, probably about 1 to 2 teaspoons of diced garlic, probably about an inch of ginger that's been peeled and chopped into little strips. And I've got a little bit of diced onion. And then we're going to go in with some anchovy fillets. Now, if you wanted to make it more to the Filipino side, you could probably use a bit of dried dilis at this point, but these are, you know, more European style and tinned anchovies. And I'll probably put in about 6 of these. I love anchovies, by the way, so I might eat one now. So salty. Gigisa tayo yung ating mga bawang sibuyas, luya, dilis. And the anchovy fillets will start to kind of melt away and crumble. All right, now as your anchovy fillets start to break up, we can start cooking our gabi. Now, when I say gabi, I mean, of course, dahon ng gabi. Dahon means the leaves of the gabi, and gabi is, of course, taro. Now, these leaves are always dried. You always buy them dried. And the reason for that is the taro plant is mildly toxic. So if you have this when it's not been dried, it'll give you a really itchy throat, both whether you're eating the root or the leaves. So it's really important that your taro leaves have been properly dried. And these are normally available in any market here in the Philippines. And also I find in most Asian stores, you know, they travel pretty well. It's not hard to find these even in the US or Australia. Now I'm going to put in my gabi leaves. These will boil down quite a lot. So, you know, it looks like you're putting in heaps, but they will boil down. I won't put all of them for now. That looks like about enough. And then I'm going to add some coconut cream. Now, in the Philippines, it's a little cheaper to get this from the market where they actually press it for you in the market. But of course, if you're overseas, it's just easier to get canned. I find that the canned coconut milk is really good quality. Don't ever buy light coconut milk though, that's a scam. They're just adding water. You can water it down yourself, save some money. I think they sell it as like a health food as well, and they charge more for the light one, even though it's just, you're just buying less. Okay, so I've been cooking and simmering my taro leaves or dahon ng gabi for 5 to 10 minutes. And what I'm looking for is for when they've kind of absorbed all of the coconut milk that went in there. We put about a full can of coconut milk in, and that's now been absorbed almost entirely, and the leaves are now soft instead of dry. They're no longer crunchy. They're kind of starting to break apart a little bit. And at that point, we can blend them. They're gonna break up in a food processor or with a stick blender. So I'm gonna pull this out now and put it into this isang parang mixing bowl na may high walls. Now cut the heat muna, but keep that pan there because we're going to cook in that pan again in just a little while. Now what I've got going on over here, so now I've got my dahon ng gabi here in the pot, and to this I'm going to add pili nuts. So here's the, you know, the Philippine influence coming in. Pili nuts are going to be quite a lot sweeter than, you know, using pine nuts, especially these ones that have been kind of sugar roasted. So we'll put the pili nuts in as a substitute for pine nuts. You can start to see this is already becoming a more interesting dish than the traditional pesto linguini, right? Because your taro leaves are more bitter than, using basil, and your pili nuts are more sweet than using pine nuts or cashews or macadamias. So you're already going to get these more intense contrasts of flavor in the dish just from those 2 ingredients alone. Now to hold it all together, we're going to use some Parmesan or Pecorino cheese that's been grated. About a 1/4 cup will do. So I'm just going to add salt and a little bit of creaminess. And then I'm going to add in olive oil. I want about 1/4 cup. Going with a little bit more fresh garlic just because I got some here. Some salt and pepper. And last but not least, the juice of a lemon. So you want at least a 1/4 cup. I'll probably just squeeze both sides straight in to save time. You can use your knife like this. I'm using the back of the blade. And then I squeeze the lemon against either side of the metal, twist it in there. And that just ensures that your liquid, even though you're squeezing the lemon, it runs straight down the knife and into your lalagyan or whatever container you're using. You can catch the seeds if you want. I don't really mind. They're going to go through the stick blender anyway, so you won't even know about them. All right, so now we've got the basis of a pesto, right? There's the lemon juice and the olive oil and the garlic and so forth. Okay, so you guys know I love stick blenders, mainly because I've just never had a proper food processor. So buy a very powerful one so you can crush things like pili nuts. So this is my trusty stick blender, and I'm just gonna basically pulse this into a fine pesto. In the meantime, I've been pre-boiling some water over here, and my linguine is going to take 10 to 12 minutes to cook. So I'll just salt my boiling water a little bit. And then I've got my packet here of linguine. Now honestly, you can probably use any pasta. I like, for some reason, using linguine. I just like the wider, flatter pasta noodles, but I think also it sounds the best with Laing. So that was probably my real reason for choosing linguine versus a different type of pasta. But I do like pesto linguini, so it's probably a good choice. I'm going to put in about 250 grams of the pasta for that amount of pesto. That should be sufficient. And while it's cooking, I'm going to get my main pan back on the heat. I'm going to put in a little bit more olive oil. Okay, now that pan's hot and that oil's hot, we're going to put our onions in. And now those onions are nice and translucent. We're going to go in with yung itong ating mga suahe or shrimp. These are medium sized, they've been peeled already. And these are going to cook really fast. And while they're cooking, I'm going to add my chili flakes in now. About a tablespoon of chili flakes. And I'll squeeze a little bit more lemon. Okay, those are just about cooked. They look fantastic, they smell fantastic. Now, if you've timed this like a total legend, you can basically take your linguine straight out of the pot and put it straight into the sauce here. So you just want that to be nice and al dente. It normally takes between 8 and 12 minutes, but you should always be checking. Once you get to about 8 minutes cooking time, just take a bite, check. Might need another minute or two. And don't worry if you get some of that pasta water in there, that'll just help our pesto thicken a little. Next we're going to add our pesto. So that's here. Try to show that to you as I tip it in. But that's thick, it's finely processed. And then we're gonna add another 1/2 cup or so of coconut cream. And another bit of olive oil. Literally east meets west. And then toss the whole thing together. And if you've been wondering this whole episode whether I'm just talking smack and this dish is really possible, I think if you're looking at a close-up shot of this right now, you'll believe this can be done, and it's actually pretty cool. Turn the heat off. Okay, now for the last step here, we're gonna also garnish it east and west. So we use pecorino cheese in the pesto itself. I'm actually now going to just finish it with a few pieces of quesong puti from right here in the Philippines. And then we use taro leaves in the pesto, so I'm actually going to garnish it with a little bit of fresh basil that I actually grew on the rooftop of Maputing Cooking HQ. Okay, so there it is, guys. This is my recipe for Laing Linguine. This is I think, a pretty brand new Filipino fusion dish that you can try out at home. Thanks so much for Eduardo for telling me and sharing his idea about how to cook this. What's really interesting with wine pairing with something like this, I mean, where do you start, right? There's so many influences in there, but probably lean towards doing a dry white wine with this. Why? Because we've got, firstly, we've got the seafood in there, and fairly sweet seafood because we're using the prawns. Second, we've got the coconut milk or cream. So you want a wine with plenty of acid. So you're looking for a dry style, but higher acid wine. So normally an Australian dry Riesling will actually work very well with something like this. I'll give it a taste. Maybe on its own first. Yeah, so the wine actually does work really well, basically for all the reasons I said. You really need the prawns. Don't try and do this without the prawns because the taro leaves are considerably more bitter than doing basil. Some people do pesto with basil and spinach, which gives it a bit more bitterness, but not like taro leaf bitter. So you really do want a little bit of sweetness coming through this dish. If you didn't use the prawns, you'd have to look for some other type of sweet in this dish, even if you had ended up putting in a bit of sugar or something. The pili nuts on their own are not enough sweetness for it, so I found the prawn was really essential to hold it together. So I'm gonna leave it there. I'm looking forward to eating this bowl of pasta, drinking this glass of wine. Remember, if you want to learn more about wine and Philippine food pairing, do check out Wine by Chris Urbano. It's my wine business here in Manila, and that's a fantastic place to get started. We talk a lot there about how to actually enjoy wine with Filipino food, because you can and should do it. And of course, you leave a comment if this recipe got your interest. Tell me what kind of fusion foods you guys like to do wherever you are around the world, and I would really love to hear from you. And if you cook this, take a picture and put it up on our Facebook page. We'd love to share that with our other kababayans here in the Philippines and abroad. So thanks for your time. I'm Chris Urbano. We will see you next time, and this has been Laing Linguine. Thanks guys, we'll see you next time, bye.